Welcome everyone to our second session of the Career Edge webinar series created by our Business School Alumni Network. Through this four-part series, we're hoping to provide you with an in-depth look at current industry trends while also helping you brush up on your professional skill set. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We have a great session lined up today with a focus on resumes that get results. Before I get started with some introductions, I wanted to let you all know that we'll be taking questions throughout the presentation. So go ahead and utilize your Q&A function that you will see on your screen. You can submit any questions throughout the presentation, and then we'll get to as many as possible during the end of our presentation. All right, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Morlan. I'm a business school alumni, and I'm currently an IT project manager for DaVita. Today, I will be moderating with our exceptional presenter, Sue Wyman. Sue Wyman has 15 years of experience in national executive search and over 10 years of experience in career and job search coaching. Prior to launching her search practice, she worked in sales leadership roles in startup and Fortune 50 organizations and led teams of up to 75. Sue has an executive MBA from the University of Denver and a Bachelor of Science in Technical Management from Regis University. Welcome, Sue, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Amber. Today we're going to talk about how you can stand out in what is usually a sea of resumes. I thought we'd start first with a little bit of foundational information. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the job hiring process. And the piece I think that no one loves is the applicant tracking system. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that. I think you have to consider your reader. And I think we assume that our reader is a human being. And that is probably not the case many of the times. So the first place that your resume usually goes when you apply online is into the applicant tracking system, which is a database for job postings and resumes. And that database ranks you by keywords. And it really can't translate complex formatting and graphical resumes, which are highly images versus text. And it often doesn't even take information from a header, as something as simple as that. So don't put your contact information in there because you might have a resume without contact information. Some of the older applicant tracking systems are really very Neanderthal, and some of them don't even like resumes that have bullets. So these can be picky. Most of the time you're applying into corporations who have updated systems, so you're okay. The second place your resume goes is to a recruiter. And the recruiter is generally very unemotional about this, and it's very transactional. They may be working on as many as 35 or 40 jobs at a time. They're viewing hundreds and hundreds of resumes each day, and they really need to get why they should consider you in a very short amount of time. And if you've heard the 5 or 6 second number, I have to tell you that it is pretty true. And they absolutely appreciate easy to read resumes. If you're looking at hundreds, you're going to get eye strain by the end of the day anyway. So try and make yours a resume that's good.
Oh, okay. So that's great information, Sue. Question though, on the graphical resume, what exactly is that, and when would it be appropriate, for example, if you're a marketing person or a design person?
Okay, well, here's an example of a very graphical resume. And you can imagine in an applicant tracking system, that tracking system is parsing data from your resume, and it's parsing it from a text in your resume. And it would die in this kind of an environment because so much of this are images rather than text. And I think you can it looks fabulous, but I think you can see it really limits how much information you can really put on there. So if you want to do one or need to do one because of your industry, I think that, certainly you would PDF it, absolutely. But I think you can email it to a recruiter or hiring manager if you have their contact information, and you can certainly bring it to the interview. But for safety's sake, to get your information across, I think submitting a traditional resume for an online application is the best way to go. So also in considering your reader, probably the most important reader is the hiring manager. And they deeply understand what the job is and what they're looking for. And of course, they also appreciate that it's easy to read your resume and having that information that's really important to them. And it's that reader ultimately will decide if you get the prize. And the prize is most certainly an interview. Here's a picture, maybe a little fuzzy for some of you, but it's a representation of what a screen on an applicant tracking system looks like. So when that recruiter logs in, that's what they're going to see. So I think people assume that they're going to see your resume, and that really is probably, may or may not be true. And you can see in this instance on the left, it's very easy for them to mark you as a favorite or delete you. And if they delete you, they're not deleting you from the entire database, they're just deleting you from being considered for that particular search. And then there's always some sort of a stack ranking. In this case, there are about 9 people who received 100, and then it really kind of drops like a rock to 50. So I think you can imagine from a recruiter's perspective, they're going to click on resume for those people who scored highest in the situation.
Wow, so it looks like you can get eliminated pretty quickly. What would be the difference between receiving 100 and receiving a 50?
I think it could be a couple of things. Simply it could be that the person just doesn't have the required experience, and that's the easy answer. Or they might actually have the experience, but not have really put it on their resume. They could think, well, somebody who's looking at this knows that if I did this job, that I did that, expecting people to read between the lines. And I think it's, an applicant tracking system is simply not going to read between the lines. And many of the recruiters that are working in corporations, some of them are very new to business, and they don't really have any depth of knowledge about what the actual jobs are. And to them, as to the applicant tracking system, it's words on a page. So you have to have the right words on the page. As an example, here is part of a posting for a social media marketing job. So I think it's really important to be very realistic when you're looking at job descriptions and really understanding what it is that they're going to want you to do. And I think you can see, channels and brand and social media over and over again. Requirements for that position, I think people get very optimistic and they look at requirements and say, I absolutely have excellent verbal and written communication skills, and I am organized, and I'm proficient in Excel and PowerPoint, and they say, I'm qualified. And the thing that's going to kill you in that applicant tracking system, or in general, is if you don't have 5 years of social media experience and you haven't done program management, you don't know Photoshop, and you don't know some of those social media management tools. And I think you have to be, very realistic about that. If you want a job and but don't have the skills for it, and you say, this social media job is something I would love to do, I'm absolutely going to apply. I think that you can find some ways to get some of the skills that you might be lacking. There's never been an easier time to get additional information. Some ways are quicker than others. You can go back to school for a degree or certificate, but there are lots of things online, and we have some information on our website of ways that you can get different skill sets, where you can get some Google skills and some Photoshop skills. So we'll point you to where that is. You can also volunteer for an organization where you can do some marketing if you haven't done marketing before, and that's something you can absolutely put on your resume. Going back to that job description, I went through and did a Control F, which a Control F can be very much your friend, because you can see not only how many times some keywords show up in a position description and requirements, but you can also see how much that shows up on your resume. So if you don't have social and content and brand and channels in your resume, you're going to be far more likely to end up in that 50 or lower range. So let's dig into the resume. Purpose of the resume. I think everyone knows that the resume is how you get an interview. But I think what you need to think about too is that it's really an opportunity to determine how you're going to market yourself and how you're going to tell your career story for the kinds of jobs that you want. Resume styles, the preferred format, and I say preferred because it's preferred by recruiters and hiring managers, is chronological. And that's where your work history contains like where you worked and your experience and your accomplishments with the most recent job first. Functional resumes were, for a while, outplacement firms loved functional resumes because it hides a few sins. But recruiters and hiring managers know that it hides some sins and just aren't interested in looking at that. It's too hard. Again, you're going back to your reader and considering them, and they have to be able to connect the dots of what you did where pretty quickly.
So, Sue, would there ever be a time that you would use a functional resume? And are there different types of resumes or different styles for different professions, like if you're in government or IT?
I would say that from being a recruiter for 15 years, that I would never see a reason to use one, because it is just so likely that it's going to get you kicked out of the process. But as far as different kinds of resumes, absolutely. A resume, some government agencies have specific formats that they want. CVs, everything that you've ever done. In academia, for staff positions, you're good with a regular resume, but if you're going to be a professor, then you need a different kind. What we're going to be talking about today is pretty much what you would do of trying to get a corporate job or nonprofit or something like that. So basics. So we're down, we're in the weeds here. I would say using a very clean and easy to read font like Arial or Tahoma is a good way to go. Times New Roman was the classic font for resumes, and I find it really, really hard to read, particularly when you're looking at a ton of resumes. Font size of 10 or 11 is good. 12 just seems big. So if you don't have much experience, you might have to go to a 12 to fill the page. But I think for most of the people who are on the call today, probably a 10 or 11 is how you're going to want to go. Stay away from that complex formatting that we talked about. It's distracting. It doesn't get you more attention because you have a lot of underlines and colors and things like that. It kind of works to the reverse. It shouldn't be in first person. I did this, I did that. And it certainly shouldn't be in third person. Miss Wyman did. That's a really dated kind of a way to go. I think bullets are the best because bullets are just easier to understand. When I see a paragraph, my eyes glaze over and I could skip that information. And, make sure that your bullets don't look like a paragraph. They should probably be pretty much a 3-line minimum. There are times it might go to 4, but you also don't want a bullet that has 3 words in it. So, there's a line that you walk there. 1 to 2 pages. If we went back to that academia role, it could be very long, but in a corporate, 1 to 2 is fine. If you have a 4-page resume, people wonder about you, and they don't wonder in a good way. It's kind of like get over yourself a little bit on that. 1 to 2, fine. And just being consistent in how you do things. People update their resumes over time, and I have seen resumes where they use kind of one style 10 years ago, and they kind of switch, and it's all in the same document, and it just looks haphazard, and that's not how you want to be viewed. Lose the references available upon request. Of course they are. You don't have to tell people that. You will give them. And name your resume. I have probably seen thousands of resumes that were named resume, and not helpful. Put your name on it so that if somebody downloads it to their desktop, that they can actually find you. And also, like resume number 18, version 18, probably not good for them to know that. And bottom line, make it perfect and error-free. Employers feel if you can't control your resume, what can you control? It's a fairly static document, and you want to make it perfect. 2 ways, obviously, the way all of us know, but we don't always use, is spell check. And that's certainly your first line of defense. Something that actually a student told me about a year or so ago is Grammarly, and it is great. There are 2 versions. One is free and one is paid, and you can drop your resume or a cover letter or virtually whatever you're doing into Grammarly, and it will give you some good advice. So sections, an objective, rarely used for experienced candidates. What we'll be talking about mostly is summary of experience or summary of qualifications. Summary of qualifications, the only difference is that maybe you don't really have the experience and you're relying on some academic or Coursera or things that you've done. Professional experience, education, where it appears on the resume, bottom of the resume if it's dated, closer to the top if it's recent, and then a category that you can do a lot of different things with. It can be community service, it can be community service and leadership, it can be a number of different things. If you're a technical person, an IT person, you would probably have a technical experience category in there up at the top. You never know how far people are going to go when they read your resume. So if it's something that's really important, I would put that technical experience category before professional experience.
So, Sue, I know this is something I've debated in the past. Is there ever a time that you would use an objective on your resume?
I think if there's something that's unclear. So if you live in Denver and you want a position, you're looking at positions in San Diego, then I think you put, to pursue a project management or program director position in San Diego. So you can be specific on that. Also, if you're an accounting person and you've been in audit for most of your career, but you're switching to tax, and that you're interested in tax positions. So you might use it, but it's probably not going to happen very often.
Okay. What about if you have certifications? Would that go with education, or is it a separate part?
I think you can decide. I think with certifications, if you're a technical person, that you might put it in technical experience and technical skills and certifications. So it might go to the top. If you are, if that's not you, if you have a PMP or something like that, I would put it in the summary of experience. Okay. So here is what a completed resume might look like, just to kind of give you a visual before we go into it. This particular one is on 1 page. With a large amount of experience, it might really be on 2 pages, but this is kind of how it looks with the categories. So what's really important are your accomplishments, because they're a critical part of your career story. And if you've accomplished a lot of things, I think employers are going to think that maybe you'll accomplish a lot of things for them. So how to write a good bullet. I mentioned a bullet that's 3 words long is probably not going to be very helpful to you, but this kind of shows taking a bullet through a couple of different stages, kind of that so what kind of thing. I led technical teams for a major project. Well, what's major to you might not be major to me. So defining a little bit so that the reader can tell kind of how awesome what you've done is. So second one, a little better. And that actually was technical marketing and business resources and how big it was. And then the last one, just digging in a little bit more. Know that it is 4 lines on this, but it wouldn't be on your resume. But I mean, this, who would you be more interested in? I think having that additional detail really helps. How do you figure out these accomplishments? Some of the things that you did may have been a long time ago. And so I think it really takes a little bit of personal reflection and saying to yourself, what was interesting about this? And what did I really accomplish there? And if you need to go back for information, performance reviews are helpful because sometimes performance reviews have a lot of detail in them, which would be good for you in your resume. Or results that you have, from task forces that you've been on, just really kind of digging back into your head on what you have accomplished. And I can tell you, it's not only will it help you on your resume, but it will also help you on your interview. Because if somebody asks you a question, if you get to the interview phase, that's a fairly detailed question about what did that project accomplish, you don't have to do that eye dart to the corner of the room and have to think on your feet right there about it, because it's your experience, so you should be very fluent in it. So here's what a summary of experience might look like. And in this particular case, this person has some pretty wow experience. And so you can say, well, it would be pretty easy for this person to get a job just about anywhere. But I can tell you that this is not how this person's resume looked when we started in the process. And this was kind of an extraordinary case in that they had a 9-page resume. And they asked me, do you need more information? It's like, no, please, no more information. But we dug around and came up with this stuff that was, very helpful in having him move forward. Because with a 9-page resume, it's going to be pretty tough. And you're probably going to get jobs because you know people rather than being considered from LinkedIn or from applying. And this is how the professional experience would look. One of the things that you'll notice on here, where your eye goes. And you want someone to actually read your resume, not just skim it. You can't make these detailed bullets on every single bullet measurable. Not everything is measurable. But I think your eye is kind of drawn to the 50, to the 1,500, to the 750 million, to the 500. And it helps the reader pull through and actually find out about you.
So before you move on, a quick question on professional experience. What if you have many years of professional experience? How far back should you go?
I think that a lot of these things are judgment calls. You don't have to put everything you've ever done on your resume. You don't need to go back to your first job. I think the best way to go is what's helpful for you and what will help tell your story. And if sometimes it gets a little bit more challenging because you might have had, some amazing positions that were a long time ago that you want to show, but you really don't want to show some of the things in the middle. So, I think there's a certain dance you have to do of figuring that out. But there is no hard and fast rule that's absolute that only go back 10 years or this or that. I think with every individual, it's pretty custom on how you're going to do it.
Okay.
Education and community service, very simple. If you've done something, if you've really been involved in that organization under your community service, I think that you can talk about that. You know, if you helped plan an event for 500 people that raised, you know, $200,000, or if you handled the finances or did the social media or whatever it is, I think you can add a bullet to that, because that could help you with some of your keywords too.
So in terms of education, should that be at the top or at the bottom? And what if you received your degree a long time ago?
I think that if it's recent, it should be on the top portion of your resume. And again, another judgment call on what's recent. And you could say after you've had your degree for 3 or 4 years, that's when you move it down. If you received your bachelor's a long time ago and your graduate degree more recently, I think then, you know, it goes to the top. And then you have to make the decision on, I may want to put my graduate degree of, you know, 2016 or 2017 on there, but my undergrad was in, you know, whenever. So you have to just pick what you're going to do on that.
Okay.
So once again, here's a shot of how the whole thing looks together. And on our website, which I'll give you the link to that at the end, we have sample resumes for IT, for finance, for accounting, so for a lot of different disciplines. Some of them are targeted toward, they're more undergrad looking in nature, but it gives you an idea of how it should be. So you can kind of see what, you know, your particular flavor might be. There's also one for a sample for MBA, MS students, and sample cover letters and everything too. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about LinkedIn profiles, because as it says at the bottom, more people are going to see your LinkedIn profile than are ever going to see your resume. Your LinkedIn profile is going to be viewed by peers when you start a job. It's going to be reviewed by recruiters and hiring managers before your interview. So, you know, it's very, very important. And a LinkedIn profile that's not very detailed is not going to be helpful to you. So after your resume is done, it's very simple to do your LinkedIn profile. And what I see frequently is that the two kind of documents, if you call it that, are not in sync, and which raises questions. When I was a recruiter, I mean, I would always go to the LinkedIn profile and I would see different dates, different titles. Sometimes if it was 200,000 of something on the resume, it might be 50,000 on the LinkedIn profile. And that raised red flags for me. So you want to make sure that they're absolutely in sync. You can, for your jobs, you can cut and paste your bullets in. It allows you to kind of keep that bulleted look, which helps people understand it a little bit better. The current thing in LinkedIn is a summary of experience or a summary that is in first person. So when I'm writing them, what I usually do is I just drop that summary of experience into that section and then just rewrite it as I go. So it can be a little bit more personal. You can get a little creative with it. You can put some of your interests into it. I would say as far as how long it should be, probably maybe 75 to 200 words is probably about right, depending on your experience and what you want to say. If you're a technical person, I would also cut and paste their technical skills in there, because the more time it appears in LinkedIn, the more frequently you'll come up in searches. A professional looking photo. I mean, it's not Facebook, you know, like no dogs, no kids, no big glasses of wine, no ski goggles. And I have seen every one of those things. Just professional. You don't have to go crazy and have a professional photographer and a headshot. Just look good. Have someone take a picture of you on their smartphone. Don't do a selfie because you can tell, and put that up there. One trick too is to customize your URL. I gave you an example of mine. This is really important if you're going to put your LinkedIn link on your resume. Because if you put it up there with all those numbers hanging off the end, people will judge you. They just will. People will judge you all the time. So that allows you to customize it where it's more professional looking. You can use it on the top of your resume. I don't have a strong opinion on doing that or not, but you can certainly use it on the signature line of your email. I think that's a great place to put it. Now, when I did that, when I customized mine, it was a long time ago, so your name may be taken. So you're going to have to maybe be a little creative on what that looks like. But don't be crazy creative, because that's not good. So checklist. I think, again, being realistic when you're looking at job descriptions and seeing if there are gaps between what you want to do and what your experience is and what shows on your resumes, and really filling those gaps with training or doing volunteer work or a lot of different ways. And then creating a resume that will really work for you and will help you in applicant tracking systems and help you tell your story. And then, again, once the resume is done, updating or creating your LinkedIn profile. You are more than welcome to use our resources at business.ucdenver.edu BCC. That's where we have the sample resumes. We have a document on there that has skills required for different industries, disciplines, and then on the flip side of it, it has suggestions of where you can get some of those skills. And if you are an alum of the business school, you are welcome to reach out to us at the email address that is on there. If you're from another part of the university, you can work with the Career Center on the main campus or a career coach or whatever you need. So that is it for me.
Okay, great. So we will move on to the question and answer section. We'll try and get to as many questions as possible in the remaining time. If we don't get to all the questions, we will provide responses when we send out a link to today's presentation. Okay, first question is, how do you combat against ageism on a resume?
I think that goes to deciding how far you're going to go back in your experience. And if you're going to put the year you graduated from college on it, those things are seen very quickly. So I think you have to make a judgment call on that. I saw a resume once, actually from a friend's husband, and I seriously almost blacked out when I saw it because he had his first job first, and it was in like 1972. It's like, oh, no, not that. Don't do that. But so really, including the important things, but maybe not going back too far in your experience.
Okay. Is a standard Word document format better than a PDF?
I actually prefer the Word document. There are a million different formats for resumes, but the one that I've showed you in the presentation is one that I used when I was in executive search, a Word doc, and it made it through most applicant tracking systems with flying colors. It had enough formatting that it wasn't totally bland looking, but yet it could still survive.
Do the PDFs make it through the tracking?
I would say with newer applicant tracking systems, yes. But there are those systems out there that Neanderthal, that don't take PDFs, don't like bullets, don't like much of anything. So either way will probably work.
Okay. Now a question on the formatting. What if a bullet ends up looking like a paragraph?
then it's, I mean, if it's 4 lines in one bullet, it might be okay. If it's 4 lines on every bullet, you just put a bullet in front of a paragraph. So I think it's really trying to be succinct in how you're expressing that. And I'm a big fan of semicolons, so you can get different thoughts into one bullet.
Oh, great. All right, next question. What is the best way to initially submit a portfolio electronically?
I think the first question is, do you need to submit a portfolio? And I think that really depends on what you do. You know, if you're a graphic arts person or a web developer or something like that, then I think you need to. If you're in marketing, sometimes yes. I don't know. It might be best to do the portfolio when you're at a certain spot in the interview process, rather than giving them everything you've got immediately. If they want a portfolio, they'll ask you for one, and some people put their portfolios on a website. That's probably one way to do it, but boy, do you have to make sure that that portfolio is awesome. And that you're not the only one who thinks it's awesome. You know, so get some advice on that, because I have excluded candidates before because I saw some of their work. So you just have to be cautious.
Good to know. Next question, does the applicant tracking system read your job experience by years? So for example, do you have to explicitly say, I have 5 years experience at such and such?
I think you would put 5 years of experience at such and such to help your reader, because if they have in their position description that they want over 5 years of experience, then you're just making it simple for them. Some probably not as much on the applicant tracking system, because it's not going to search under 5. But some of the applicant tracking systems have become very fancy, and they ask you screening questions. So if there's a screening question that says, how many years of experience do you have in project management, and that could screen you. But generally in the resume, that's going to be something determined by somebody who actually reads it.
Okay. Next question. If you're looking to change careers, you won't have the right words to get on that resume. So what is something you could do when you don't have enough of the right keywords?
I would say that document that's on our website, which is like skills and requirements, and you'll see it when you get in there. It has skills for finance, skills for marketing. So, and you're going to see those in position descriptions. You're going to see kind of common themes on what people are looking for. So there are just so many ways to get some of that information. Udemy, Coursera, Code Academy if you're technical, or going back to school for a degree or certificate. It just depends on how fast you need it and the amount of depth that you need.
Okay. This next question, where did it go? Is there a particular site to get a good example of a resume for different types of jobs? I think you answered that is on the Business Career Center website.
Right.
For connections. Also, what are some of the necessary keywords to include on the resume? You mentioned you have examples on there.
Well, it depends on what the job description says. So like the example, if it's a social media job and it has social in it like 25 times, you'll know that you should probably have social in your resume. So it's going to depend on the different jobs that you're looking for. It's going to be different for someone who's a project manager, and it might need to be schedules, statement of works, cross-functional teams. There might be some of those for project management where it would be something else for accounting, something else for marketing. So those clues will really be given to you in looking at the job description.
Okay, makes sense. Next question, where would awards go on a resume?
It depends. So it could be in that kind of catch-all category at the bottom, community service and awards. Or if you've received awards at a particular job, it could be included in that section of professional experience. Or it could be in summary of experience if you're trying to combine, like frequent sales, over quota, award winner, 4 president's clubs, 5 on the spot, so, and it could be in both places, and I think that depends on, if you're in sales, those awards for over quota performance, having them in there a couple times is not a bad thing, because that really measures, there's nothing more measurable than sales. So, that depends.
Okay, next question. If you have a degree, what happens if you have a degree that's not very well known? Is there a good way to present that? So, for example, a Master of Arts in Medical Anthropology. And the question, this person says they sometimes use an objective to discuss the type of job I'm searching for and make it more clear what types of positions for which he's qualified for, he or she. Is that appropriate to use?
I think so. And I think, some stories will be told by what your experience has been, but you can also kind of pump up that summary of qualifications or experience by, if you have academic project work or something in that area where you don't have experience, you can talk about those kinds of things. If you're a recent graduate and there are some classes that you took during your degree that relate to what you want to do, you can include some of those. And on some of the sample resumes, a lot of them that you'll see on the website, you'll see it starting out with, Master of Science, accounting student, relevant coursework includes. So it just depends. You wouldn't put that on there if you had 25 years of work experience.
Okay. Here's a good question. How do you handle deviations or career gaps? For example, if someone's working part-time so that they can take care of their kids, or they're staying home to take care of their kids, how do you list those career gaps or time off on a resume?
In that case, you might want to go more with years than month and year. But when you're, it's going to come up at some point, because in the application process, a lot of times you have to put the actual month and the year, and you need to be really accurate on that, because if people are doing background checks, they call employer and you said you started in May and they said you didn't start until December, those are kind of red flags. You can also put a job that was a part-time job. It doesn't have to say on your resume that it was a part-time job. So I think that's okay. And if there's a big gap, I think you can put sabbatical. And then under sabbatical, talk about some of the things you did, if it was volunteer work or something like that.
Okay. All right, next question. If you went to 2 colleges before you because you changed majors, do you include the first college even though you didn't graduate from that college?
You do not have to. Like if it was, Harvard, maybe you'd want to put it in there.
Right.
But no, you don't have to. And personally, I went to a number of colleges, and my resume would be more than 2 pages if I did all of that. So whichever one you finish from wins. Unless it's something where you want to show that you have accounting and finance, and the first one was in accounting, so if it serves you, both of them. If it doesn't serve you, the last one.
Gotcha. Okay, last question. If you just changed careers, do you put positions in your previous field on your resume to show that you can keep a job for longer periods of time?
Yes. I don't think you would necessarily start with a blank slate that, what you're doing is the only one that you've done. But you may just include 1 or 2 or whatever.
Okay.
But you don't want it to look like you haven't ever done anything.
Right. Great. All right. If we didn't get to your question, we will be creating a Q&A sheet with the answers, and you'll receive that as part of the webinar survey that we'll send out after the presentation. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Have a great afternoon, and thank you very much.